All right, guys, welcome back to part 2 of the Ocean Exploration Diaries. We originally wanted to do this in one episode, but we just got too engrossed.
Our stories were too good.
We just got engrossed in storytelling, and so this is part 2. And
if you haven't listened to part 1, there's some sketchy ocean stories in part 1, so you should listen to that first.
Yeah, part of the reason we wanted to do this is to just like raise awareness of what it means like to be prepared for sketchy ocean situations, understanding that putting yourself in the ocean in different variable conditions has different types of risks and lessons that we've learned, unfortunately, the hard way from being in the ocean in dangerous situations. So thank you for being here. This is another episode of Sustainability and the Sea.
And we're back.
Okay,
Carissa. So this one,
I'm scared to.
Yeah, I didn't know you at the time, but I know you've told me this story so many times that I could probably tell it. But what happened in the ocean? What was the situation you were in?
Okay. When we were talking about what stories we want to tell on this episode, I was like, I don't want to tell this one because I think it sets a really bad example. So instead, I'm just going to give you a disclaimer that this is a really like I was a silly little girl making bad decisions.
Yeah, let's learn from this mistake.
Let's learn from it and never do what I did. Okay. All right, setting the stage. This was year 1 moving to Hawaii. I was a eager graduate student from Arizona, the desert. I I'm a really good swimmer and I had like a lot of ocean experience, but I didn't have surf experience. And I was, as one does in their first year living here, learning to surf. And I was with my new but nonetheless best friend, Lauren, who has come on the podcast before talking about marine debris and Papahanaumokuakea Marine Debris Project. And she's also our best friend and a marine debrisologist. And it was her and Kirsty, our other friend, who is in the program. And they were like so stoked.
They were good surfers too.
They're good surfers. Lauren's like grown up surfing in Charleston, but nonetheless like has surfed bigger waves on Oahu. Kirsty had moved over from Maui and was a shortboarder. So they were like stoked on the first winter swell of the North Shore on Oahu.
So yeah, you guys are going to the North Shore, which is like known for having bigger waves.
Yeah, I don't even think we need to provide additional information. So we're going to the North Shore of Oahu on the winter, and everyone's so excited, and Lauren's like giddy. Kirsty's like giddy too, and I'm like, I'm learning. And
what's the worst that can happen?
That's the part I didn't want to say in the story. Okay, now I have to tell that. I literally looked at Lauren and I was like, it's the ocean. What's the worst that could happen? And to this day, it's been 8 years. They still say that to me to make fun of me. And I say it to other people to make fun of them. Because everything can go wrong in the ocean. The ocean is the most powerful force on the planet.
In all ways.
It was the silliest thing that anyone has ever said in the history of all time. And so, anyway, Kirsty and Lauren should have been like, no, Carissa.
They should have.
They should have.
They were too excited on the stoke.
Okay, so like we're paddling out. It's huge. And you know, they're saying things to each other. And I had surfed a bit at this point. I just hadn't surfed waves this big, and I had surfed the North Shore, but I hadn't surfed a location like this. I didn't understand what shifting sets were. So Kirsty is like screams to me and Lauren, shifting sets, and we're like, okay, we see what's going on. The waves are big. Okay. Anyway, I don't even know what happened. This was like within 15 minutes of us being out there.
Kind of blacked it out.
I got pushed. Oh, it wasn't really a current, but it was just like it was so much whitewash. It was the heaviest waves.
And whitewash is like really hard to paddle and swim in.
So hard. So I get pulled into the impact zone, which like just like I don't even surf waves that are big enough to really have that much of the impact zone anymore. So like This is just, I get pushed into the impact zone. You're supposed to really kind of be on the shoulder. That's where like Kirsty was. We're far away from each other. I don't think they can hear me. And I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna take. So then if you looked at the beach, like from where I was, there's like sand on the left and there's like reef and lava rock on the right. And so like we went out on the sand, and the idea is you go in on the sand, and I was like getting sucked over right in front of the lava rock, and I was being held under. There was just like these sets were like so big. There were so many waves. I was just being held under, and because I didn't know what was going on, and I had, as a young person in my 20s, I like had a lot of anxiety when I was younger, and I panicked in the ocean, and this happens a lot, and like everyone knows, like it doesn't really matter. I don't want to say that. How you react to situations ultimately determines how safe they can end up being. You can be in relatively sketchy or dangerous situations, and if you have a calm head, that can end up being the difference between life or death. So me panicking in the ocean was the worst thing that I could have done. It was out of my control.
Yeah, but it's hard not to at times too. So.
It was hard. I didn't have the tools or the skills or the knowledge to be able to know, like, talk yourself down, start taking deep breaths, whatever. All I was doing was I had immediately transitioned to survival mode because I had time for one breath in between a wave before the other one pushed me down and held me down. And so I would come up, you're facing the wave, the next wave that's about to hold you down. You get one breath and you go back down, and they're just, you're getting like, it's like a washing machine. You're being like, so it's like over and over and over. And so what ended up happening, and the last wave on the set is usually the biggest. And so you're held down the longest for the last wave. And so then I go through like maybe 2 sets of that while panicking. And when you're panicking,
it's exhausting. You wear yourself out.
You're exhausting. Yeah, you're just going to drown. I have a thought, and I just want everyone to know that I would have died. I would have died if I had done this. I was going to ditch my board and swim in, because the board was like also getting pulled around. I just didn't know.
And your board is your flotation device, so you don't want to do that.
Never do that. Never unstrap from your board in a sketchy situation. It's like it's your PFD. And so I have a second. I'm in between the sets, and I scream to Lauren, literally have no energy, and I scream, and I'm like, just help me. Like, help me. Lauren, Kirsty doesn't know what's going on. She's like probably catching waves over where you're actually supposed to be catching them. And Lauren comes to saves my life, and she's like, "We're gonna paddle back." You guys, it is so hard to paddle someone in. I had to do it once for your brother. We can tell that another time. But to paddle someone in, and Lauren's like shorter than me, and like she comes in, and I'm just like, she's there, and I was like, "Do I ditch my board?" And she's like, "Don't ditch your board, like stop." And she basically is like, whatever you do, don't let go of your board. Try not to let go of me. But we had to like separate when a wave was coming, because we didn't want to like get hit by each other and get our boards tangled and all this stuff. So she would like pull me in for a minute. The wave would come, tumble us and hold us down. And then we would come up and fight each other. And she would just be like, hold on. And at this point, we are like so far away from the sand. Lauren thought she was going to paddle us over to the sand. We're like, we're going to have to come up on reef. And Lauren was like, basically, and Lauren was a dive instructor, or she was going through dive instructor training. She's like a water, probably the person, sorry, honey, you're number 2, but like I trust Lauren in a water situation more than like anyone I've ever met. And Alex is number 2. And she would paddle me in. She gave direction. She was super calm the entire time. I was not calm. She knew what was going on. Then we literally are on, you guys, this is like basalt rock. Like we're like about to get with reef, with Vanna, with sea urchins. And I'm like, we have to climb on top of it. Also, there's giant waves throwing you onto it. And we're like, all right, like, I don't know what happened. We don't know what's going to happen to our boards. We don't know what's going to happen to us. Just get onto the rock.
Yeah, get to safety.
We're scraped up. We're bleeding. We cut ourselves open so bad. But, like, it didn't matter. You're not thinking about any of that stuff. And I don't even know if I was having an adrenaline rush. I think I was just panicking and, like, exhausted. And then we just, like, get on to the rock and, like, hug each other. And And then we like walked back to the beach and like Kirsty came in and Kirsty was like, I'll never forget this. Kirsty was like, oh, that was a little too big out there. Like, you guys want to go to dinner? And me and Lauren were like, Lauren was fine, but like Lauren had seen what happened to me. And I was just like, I didn't touch a board for a year. I didn't touch a board. That was the closest I feel like I've ever been to dying. Wow. I don't really know if I conveyed that the way that I should have, but that was the closest I ever felt to dying. I never touched a board until I met you a bit later, and you were like, you should just take a small board to a small day. And I was like, what is that? Like,
yeah, very different surfing styles.
Yeah, I'm not shortboarding, longboarding, and now I like have a really great relationship with surfing.
But basically just like, I feel like know your limits and respect the ocean on that one.
Yeah, and like truly the best skill, and we were talking about this the other day too at China Walls, but like truly the ability to read the ocean is probably the most important skill you can develop. It's to take the time to sit on the beach and watch what's going on, watch where the current is, watch where the waves are, because it's not something that you need to know. You need to know if something were to happen, where the channel is, where the nearest part of safety is, and I didn't do that, and I always do now, and I feel like I can read anything. And
nice. I'm glad you learned from that experience instead of just let it shake you and turn you away from the ocean, because that could also happen.
And also, like, do you feel like I panic in ocean situations still?
Not as much anymore.
Yeah, I feel like I don't really. I feel like more so than the average person, but like still, like, I'm really good in other situations, but in sometimes with ocean stuff, I'm just like I'd rather err on the side of caution and like not go out or whatever than be in a situation like that where you just don't know. And this is why, like, you know, tourists come here and they get into the ocean on the North Shore in the winter and like devastating things happen, is because like these are the biggest waves ever in the world. So yeah, I've never been back to that spot. So
I don't blame you.
I don't think I ever will. Okay, before we get into the second story, we have a quick little ad break from our friends at ESG. So see you in a minute. This episode of Sustainability in the Sea is brought to you by ESG Review. ESG Review is a newsletter and quarterly magazine that covers environmental, social, and governance strategies for people who want to learn more about those topics. It's entirely free. Their digital newsletter and magazine can be found at esgreview.net. And I personally think it's a really great resource for those of you that are looking to implement sustainability into corporate workplaces, learn more about what's at the front lines of sustainability innovation, and trying to better understand what investment or company investment looks like in the context of sustainability. So check out all of their incredible resources at esgreview.net. Let's get back into the episode.
All right, so for my next and last one,
the finale. What's it gonna be?
I don't know if this is a finale worthy. That was a scary one. So in 2021...
Wait, what is yours?
I'll get there. I'm telling the story. Okay. Okay, in 2021, I went up to Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument to study monk seals. I was in the monk seal field team. And so every year, I think we talk about this in another episode, so go find that one. We'll go dive deeper. But every year they send...
To learn more about Papahanaumokuakea, you can listen to that one with Lauren.
Perfect.
Is more focused on marine debris, but Alex was up there doing monk seal work, and they do work up there too with like sea turtles and seabirds and.
But ultimately, so it's very remote. It's like 1,000 miles away from the main Hawaiian Islands.
You can only get picked up by ship.
Yeah, ship. It's where Midway is. If you know, have you heard of the Battle of Midway or something like that? It's where that is, but. People think like, oh, that's close to things. It's not.
These are also the ancestral islands. So volcanic archipelagos are formed from a hotspot in tectonic plates, and you know, the tectonic plate moves, and so these are the oldest Hawaiian islands, and they're smaller.
They're not very big, yeah. They're about a couple football fields wide. You can walk around it in a couple hours, if that. And
is this a tsunami story?
Oh, I guess I can hop into that, but.
You have to tell them that.
All right, it's a two-part story. I'll try to make it summarized. So ultimately, we're living up in tents up there for, I think, 3 months was my field season, and it varies by year. Sometimes it's up to 6 months. Some people live there year-round in tents, essentially. Bare minimum living, and yeah, it's something like no other.
Tents, bathing in the ocean.
Yeah.
You did have a kitchen.
We had a kitchen tent. Yeah.
A cooler.
A little ice solar freezer.
Yeah, at sea level.
Yeah, but anyways, that's all explained in the last episode. So I'm up there, and about halfway through, I would say, we get this text on our
satellite phone.
Yeah, our satellite phone, our InReach, and we can get text from it. And it says it's from our Honolulu office, who is like there are like eyes and ears on the ground, basically connecting us to the outside world, because there's 3 of us there. And we get a text, and it's like 9 p.m. at night. So we're about to go to bed. We get a text saying, tsunami incoming, earthquake in Alaska, tsunami incoming to you guys. Stay tuned for more updates.
Okay, just on my perspective, so I was on the mainland. Me and Alex could only talk over email. I'm freaking out because
she heard about it, obviously.
Yeah, I totally heard about it. And I was also like, Alex is at 3 feet above sea level. Like, there is no high ground for the tsunami. Like, there's also no, like you were, like, in my head, I was like, oh, if it hits, because it was a warning, they were trying to evaluate it, he's dead.
I had some thoughts going through my head as well. But yeah, so ultimately, my team lead, so there's 3 of us, there's 2 technicians and a team lead. My team lead comes to my tent and goes, hey, like, you need to come out here. We just got a text. And so the 3 of us, we group up, and she's like, we just got this text saying that there was an earthquake, there might be a tsunami, we should start prepping. And so we have like these 5-gallon buckets.
What are your thoughts? What thoughts are going on?
My thoughts immediately were like, all right, we're going to make it through this. And I am going to I'm going to prep so I ensure that we're okay, was my immediate thought.
What were your teammates?
My teammates were also both very level-headed and had very similar thoughts.
Didn't you have an inflatable boat?
We'll get there, but yeah, okay. It was a life raft. So we have these 5-gallon buckets, and that's kind of like how we brought a lot of our things. And so our team lead was like, all right, fill up a 5-gallon bucket like that you can carry along with other things that you can also live on for a week. Who knows? As much as you can, but don't make it like super heavy, because we might have to like walk these around the island or whatever. So I like throw a bunch of stuff in my bucket, grab some like granola bars, like protein as much as possible, like just random things. And then and then also a bunch of water if we can. And then we go to like our little storage bin thing and grab this like lifeboat. And so these are like type of lifeboats you see like on ships. So if they get wet, they'll like pop open, and it's not really like a boat. It's like a circle that has like a little shade type of thing, and it's like kind of like a kiddie swimming pool that floats on the water. And we were like, all right. And so,
did you have flares? Did you guys pack flares?
We packed flares. We packed our InReaches, which are like our satellite phones. We packed food. We packed some like a bunch of sunscreen, and we were like, all right, we're gonna be prepped for this. And so ultimately, we were like, all right, we're gonna just wait for further direction. But if we have to, we're gonna go like inland a little bit, and like go on these little like platforms, we're about like maybe 18, 20 feet above sea level. And then the platforms are another like 4 feet. So 20 something feet above sea level. And we were just going to plop there, set up our little rescue boat or raft, and kind of wait it out. But we were like, all right, we're going to wait in camp first to see. And we were sitting there for like, it felt like hours, but I think it was like an hour since we got our first text, and just have heard nothing. Like, that was the most, like, nerve-wracking part. And so we ultimately text call.
Didn't you decide that, like, you weren't going to go to the highest part of the island because it would have hurt the seabird nest?
Well, that's why we kind of waited for further instructions, because we didn't want to, like, crush all these nests if we didn't have to. And so we were, like, prepped, ready to hike up there. It wasn't that far of a hike, maybe 5-10 minutes. But we were, like, we know exactly where we're going to go. But we just stayed in camp for then. And so we were waiting like for an hour hearing nothing. And ultimately we like call back our Honolulu office and we're like, hey, like we need an update. Like you can't just leave us on like ghosted like that. And they're like, oh, sorry, like the weather service has no updates, so we haven't talked to you. And I'm like, just give us 15-minute, like things that haven't changed, but at least let us know that we're like being monitored. It was so sketchy.
I'm at home, like just like refreshing this like web page. Like it's like 9-10 at night on a weeknight, and I'm just like in bed with Riley, like refreshing it. I was like, I'm not like gonna go to bed. And yeah,
I think ultimately it was like close to 11 p.m., maybe 10:45 p.m., and we finally get the call saying no tsunami threat, everyone's good to go. And we're just like, well, I don't know if we can go to sleep right now. Like, what was that? And so we ultimately, like, we talk for a little longer and then kind of go our separate ways into our own tents. But, like...
What did you talk about?
Just trying to ease the mood, just because it was heavy. And so...
I refreshed it and it was, like, called off and I fell asleep immediately.
Nice. I'm happy for you. Yeah. And it was not a fun experience. I had the like mindset of like, we're gonna make this through, we're gonna do everything we can to be okay, but still it was...
That feels a little delusional, like just like being grounded in reality. I'm like, why did you think you would have survived? Like, honestly,
I think we would swept to sea, and we had a little GPS that we could have sent pings to with our satellite phone, so that was my rationale. But
were you in the dark?
Well, yeah, it was nighttime.
The ocean is powerful.
Yeah. All right, and so part 2 of this story. So that was my tsunami. And then later in the season, we were out tagging, vaccinating, and monitoring these monk seals. And so we have to tag like the yearlings, the 1-year-olds. And so there was this... We didn't know if it was a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old, but it was a little bigger, a little chunkier than kind of the average. And it was evading us. It was elusive. Like, we saw it, but we had never like been able to tag it. Every time we see it, like it swims away or it sees us and we can't capture it. And so one time it's like right by our camp and we're like, this is 106. We got to get it right now. And like, so we like jump into action. And so how it works is you kind of have to like restrain the seal. One person restrains the seal. And another person will tag the seal's hind flippers with a little plastic tag. And so we can identify them. And so I'm restraining them, and I think I have it. I'm good. I'm grabbing it around, like, the neck is kind of where you grab so they can't really move. And then it is just able to slip out of my grip, and then it actually, like, bites my leg. And I was like, oh my goodness. I was more in shock than it hurt, honestly. But I was like, I got bit. Everyone off. And so we all, like... let go of the seal, and I'm once again like watching the seal hop back into the ocean, like untagged, unvaccinated, like, and like we're like towards the end of our season, so we're like, we really want to get this one because the goal, might not get it. Yeah, the goal is to get every seal so we can have like a name essentially for every seal. And so we were like,
and the reason
oh my goodness.
The reason they're doing this is because there's only 1,500 endangered Hawaiian seals left in the world, so they're doing population monitoring under permit, of course.
Yeah.
But like, also for those that might not know, like marine mammals can transmit diseases to humans because we're both mammals. They're called zoonotic diseases, and so being bit is like not just like like maybe an infection. It's like, no, they could give you a disease that none of us are vaccinated against.
Yeah, definitely.
So this is like the worst case scenario, I would say.
Yeah.
Besides a tsunami, like coming to
Canada. And being 1,000 miles away, like with no access to like we didn't have a ship. Obviously a plane can't come get me, like none of that.
Yeah, usually what they do in emergency situations is they'll see if another ship is nearby and willing to go get people.
Yeah.
Because it takes 2 weeks out.
Yeah. It takes like a week to get there of just boating. And so, luckily, I wasn't bit too hard. I was kind of just scraped by its teeth in my, like, upper leg. And also, I had a former EMT on my team, which was awesome. We also had access to, like, these, like, remote doctors. And so we would call them and, like, talk them through exactly what happened. We had a bunch of medication. So they had planned for this. Like, this is not the first time someone got bit. Actually, during my season, I was one of 3 that got bit. All of us were like not that bad, which was thank goodness. But still, I was like, oh my goodness, this is scary. And so honestly, the worst part, since I had an AMT, she was like, we got to clean it. And I'm the type of person, which is not good. I'm like, oh, I have a wound. Just don't look at it. And it'll heal on its own. It always has. And she's like, no, we are going to spray alcohol in this. We are going to scrub it. And I was just like, I was on the verge of passing out as she's scrubbing my leg. Like,
were you like, stop?
I have a pretty high pain tolerance. And she's like scrubbing. And she looks at me and she's like, how you doing? And I was like, I think I might pass out, but I'm good. And she's like, okay, sit down. She gets me some Gatorade. She takes a little break. And she's like, all right, you ready? We're going back in. And I was like, okay. And so...
was it big? I mean, I know the scar is pretty small, but like, was the actual wound pretty big? Like, how big?
It wasn't that big. It wasn't that deep, luckily. It was mostly like a scrape with their teeth. So I have a cool scar. Shout out to that scar. But...
shout out to that scar. I can't.
The most pain was scrubbing it. And so she scrubbed it out, got it really clean. I appreciate her for it. And then we called the doctors on call, and they were like, all right, take this antibiotic for X amount of days, stay out of the sun, take some rest. I was like, oh, sorry, partners, you're going to have to cover for me. As they monitor for seals around the island because we did it every day. And so ultimately another time, it was a pretty good situation for what it was, but it could have been a lot worse just because how far any access to real medical care is. And like Chris was saying, zoonotic diseases, just basic infections, I'm living in a place without running water, so it's like, how clean can it be?
You're using seawater?
No, we're using fresh water that we brought in, but this fresh water was from a boat, so it was a desalination system, I think. So, and running through the bowels of a boat, so I'm like, I don't know how clean that is.
Okay, I feel like the takeaways are in these moments, all you have is your training. And so getting first aid, getting CPR, getting AED, getting a high instructor level if you're able to, if you're all these things contribute to your ability to make informed, helpful, life-saving decisions in these situations. Now, if I had been in that situation with the surfing, I would know what to do. Mm-hmm. Whereas I was deeply uneducated at the time. Yeah. And you were your partner was an EMT, right?
Yeah, I got so lucky in that sense.
And during the tsunami thing, I could imagine you having one person having a panic attack, isn't mm-hmm. going to
isn't helpful for the overall
for the situation.
Yeah.
Right?
So true.
And also just knowing, and this is a huge lesson too, is not everyone in the world takes initiative, and so mm-hmm. you have to be the person who does. And there's this bystander effect where you kind of do what the group's doing, and it's we need to actually just make sure that if you have an idea, if you can be the leader in that moment, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah. And step up.
Yeah, step up. So.
But yeah, ultimately, gotta respect the ocean. She's so powerful, and just know your limits.
Yeah, make sure that if you're going to be doing these remote expeditions are all fun and games until you really understand the risk factors. And so just know that there's all that side of the marine bio adventure too that is not always talked about, which is why we wanted to do this episode. And so I guess this is the first one of the Ocean Exploration Diaries, but maybe we can do more in the future.
Yeah, let us know if you like these in the comments.
Yeah, we love you guys.
All right, talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to Sustainability in the Sea.